Mothers, medication and denial of intuition. When it comes to being a strong-minded young woman, at some point in your personal/spiritual evolution, you'll most likely be advised to medicate. When you're a thinker, not a stinker, you're not afraid to find things out for yourself, the pretty and the ugly. Thus, when the ugly inevitably emerges, the trusted people in your immediate environment may not know how to handle you going through the ugly and may advise you to medicate. The trusted people in your environment may have been an attributing cause for the ugly to occur also. When you come to realize with hindsight, it's your soul/self screaming to be heard, but because the ugly isn't covered in strawberries and rainbows, people usually won't see the value of this experience until you do. You'll notice during the journey of your soul's evolution, even some of the people closest to you will be committed to not understanding you because of the narratives they have within themselves. Coming to the understanding you are an individual and actually developing a sense of self for the first time, instead of mindlessly floating like a feather in the wind, adhering to others' expectations or lack of expectation, even to your own detriment. People can only meet you as deeply as they've met themselves. This can be a tough realization when you realize a lot of society encourages the superficial, not depth. Taking a tablet in hopes it will solve your mental/emotional issues and the issues of your ancestors who came before you is not sustainable, yet so many buy into it. NHS releases 2023/2024 mental health medicine statistics for England. An estimated 89 million antidepressant drug items were prescribed, an increase of 3.3% since 2022/2023. A bit from me now. If the amount of antidepressants prescribed was equal to the amount of psychological therapy prescribed by doctors, the issue wouldn't be so prevalent. However, due to psychological therapy being seen as a luxury due to the cost and demand, especially for those seeking through the NHS, what we are seeing as a result of the lack of supply yet huge demand for psychological therapy, antidepressants are being prescribed as a long-term solution, and doctors have no alternative to antidepressants to offer their patients. It is suggested you take antidepressants alongside some form of psychological therapy, yet this is not happening for reasons previously mentioned. Antidepressants are also being given as a long-term solution, which they fundamentally are not. The casual manner in which doctors prescribe antidepressants is a huge issue, as due to there being no alternatives other than paying for therapy yourself, which helps get to the root of the problem, those who are subsequently poorer fall victim to these inadequate services with no exit strategy from antidepressants, as there's no alternative. The reason people take antidepressants in the first place, like other drugs, is due to a disconnection from themselves. This disconnect usually caused by people and life circumstances in their immediate environment. Depression doesn't come from nowhere, it's environmental and different for each individual depending on their circumstances. A way we're conditioned to ignore our intuition is by not acknowledging it at all. This is dangerous and can lead to illness of the mind and the body. An example of weaponized incompetence is the complete denial of intuition. For men and women, society not acknowledging intuition, connection with oneself, ultimately can result in physical and mental illness. The sad thing about this is, if people knew and were encouraged to acknowledge their intuition from a young age, it would be as easy to acknowledge for everyone as brushing your teeth. However, because in society/Western culture, we completely deny intuition, it automatically makes intuition a foreign/complicated idea, which makes it a true privilege to be in tune with yourself and intuition. It can, however, cause your quality of life to worsen if you are disconnected/not in tune. Also, when it comes to hobbies and spare time, I've noticed when you're in tune, you tend to spend your time intentionally, with intent. However, when you're unconscious and not in tune, alcohol is a common hobby, go-to activity, way to spend your time, which usually can lead to dysfunction and destruction, especially among alcoholics and poverty-minded individuals. The pushback you get when you start living unapologetically for yourself and not for others. Cutting off abusive parents as a daughter when you have an addict or abusive parent, you are forced to be independent, with understanding of the fact you will never have a father to have your back. So it's a lack of foundation to which you're going into the world with. This changes the way you see the world. It can also be a tough thing to accept with regards to people you deem close ones. When your caregivers do not help / plan prepare for a future, it puts you in a balls to the wall position, as you learn no one is coming to save you. You are Superman, thus you have to save yourself. As a result, you must start thinking for yourself, regardless of repercussions. Foundations, the importance of them when the groundwork isn't laid. People with present parents go into the world with a different foundation to those who don't have present parents. However, more often than not, the same is expected of those who don't have present parents, even though their foundation hasn't been set. Within families, especially dynamics between cousins and siblings, can be a difficult thing to face. If you're the person without a dad whose foundation hasn't been set, it can be a tough pill to swallow when you're the relative whose dad wasn't around, or you're the relative whose parent has been on government assistance their whole life. It creates a divide. Once you notice the divide and it affects you deeply, you can either choose to be willfully ignorant or choose to change your circumstances. You have two choices: stay where you are with no stability among relatives whose foundations are set, fathers present, or go out there and build a foundation for yourself, by yourself, without adequate support. Reference: Transitions into and out of Poverty in the United States by Anne Huff Stevens, UC Davis. Increased time spent in poverty is associated with lower chances an individual will exit poverty, which ranges from 56% after 1 year poor to 13% for those in poverty for 7 or more years. Once the veil has been lifted in relation to yourself and the people you no longer relate to. Spiritual enlightenment. Loner syndrome. Being a loner is super real. When you no longer operate the way you used to, especially the first few years, simply your whole life dimension as you know it shifts. When you discover your ways of life until spiritual enlightenment to a large degree were a result of trauma and poverty, adopting to a new way of life takes time. More time than you may think, or know what to do with, as you're quite literally building your life as you know it. A whole death and rebirth experience takes place, one that shifts your reality, your environment, your psychological makeup, your friends, your habits and hobbies. Thanks. Be real.